Hi everybody, on another one of the great bridges around across the Chippewa River here. I was going to sit in this little shelter. I did the chat from there once when it was raining, but there aren't tables. This is more comfortable actually. So it's less than 2 weeks till Christmas, huh? Again, the fourth Sunday of Advent will be on the 24th on Christmas Eve, so that makes Advent pretty short, 22 days. Got some parish news, a few other things to maybe talk about. We're having a great run of Saints Days this week. So PCCW bake sales this weekend, so don't panic if you I don't know, just don't have enough butter in the house, or butter's expensive, huh? What isn't, right? Because you can get your Christmas cookies at church this weekend. You don't even have to bake, so that might be good. I do my little cranberry lemon bars for Thanksgiving. That's the extent of my sweets baking of the year. I'm glad my brother likes them, and it's good. So I'll enjoy the PCCW bake sale this weekend. Not sure if I'll get to my bread loaves or not. I'd like to make that whenever they have a bake sale, but we'll see. I had a yeast problem last time. It turned out okay, but it was nip and tuck whether the yeast was active or not. It's the last weekend to buy Holy Land items, so the sale's gone very well. Again, thanks to Gail and Sharon and Rita for being there, and I think who steps in there all the time to help? I can't remember. Oh gosh. Anyway, it's good. It's a nice opportunity. It's a win-win. It's hard to get money over to Bethlehem now, but I think I found a way. So, because it's in the West Bank, and there's a lot of restrictions right now as far as what can pass into the West Bank and out of the West Bank. And they need it. They're very eager to see what we can pull in for donations and whatnot, and the sales. So that'll go to people that have really just have no income now because of the war in the West Bank. Good folks, and some of them, their whole mission is to take care of, be in community with people with intellectual disabilities. So we want to keep that community going as strong as we can. Fourth Sunday of Advent. (9 a.m.) Oh yeah, just review the Mass schedule again. I'll just keep doing that until we get. So our last Sunday of Advent is December 24th, Christmas Eve. So we'll have the one Mass at 9 a.m. So not an 8 a.m. Mass that's Sunday morning, not a 10 a.m. Mass that's Sunday morning. Not both, but only one Mass, 9 a.m. And then Christmas Eve, 4 o'clock, 6:30, 11 o'clock. Okay. I got to start thinking. Usually after the last Sunday of Advent, you get a day or two to start bringing all your Christmas thoughts together as far as a homily, Not this year. This year can't count on that time. So yeah, should be okay though. God's usually pretty good to me as far as giving me good ideas. So I hope so. Again, say a prayer for me and for all the pastors out there preaching Christmas, because it can be a little stressful, but it can also have a lot of positive waves you can create with a good message on Christmas. So, but before we get there, we got Advent, right? So next week, a week from yesterday, we will have Word and Music for Days of Holy Darkness. And I challenge you to be able to say that. Word and Music for Days of Holy Darkness. I wrote in the bulletin, nobody at the office says it. They say, when is Holy Darkness? When is the night of silence? When is the silent days of darkness? Nobody said Word and Music, because that's what it is. It's Word and Music for Days of Holy Darkness. No preaching. It'll be streamed. Beth Cerny said they'd be happy to stream it, her and her family. It's a passage, a reflective passage, and then that's the Word. Some scripture, some Pope Francis, I think we're having a passage from him, and other writers, poet, and then followed by some music. Especially if you feel like this Advent maybe has passed you by and you didn't get to be as reflective as you'd hoped. It's 1 hour, 7 o'clock next Tuesday the 19th of December, really close to the solstice. So love it. It's my favorite prayer experience that we have together, I think. Kind of extra special things that we do. So looking way ahead, the to-go Italian dinner fundraiser for our youth trip to Billings, Montana, the service trip, will be January 20th. Okay, so heads up on that. Talking about, this is maybe just an FYI if anybody wants to give any feedback. I've heard from a couple people that have physical disability, and it's not so easy to get in and out of cars. And we have some spaces for that on the 11th Street side of church, near the automated doors, and the other side, the huge parking lot. You have these crazy steps you have to go up when you get in the building, and it's just a hard thing to change. But anyway, you can get in the other side, but then it's harder maybe to park close. So I've heard from different people that said, boy, we'd sure appreciate it if we could get more spaces, maybe just make that whole lot for people with disabilities. And because we can get a spot, you got to get there early, like really early, like maybe 20, 25 minutes early. So I hear that. So then I talk to different groups and say, what do you think about this? And one group said, no, that's a terrible idea, and people don't need them. And I'm like, well, I'm just talking to people that do need them. And I don't know. So I think we have a responsibility to try to make it possible for everybody to come to church who can get over, So we're going to have some data collection ahead when we look, see if there are spaces open that are reserved for people with disabilities. Or anyway, that's I don't know what your experience is. So I've heard from both sides, I guess, on that. But speaking of disability, so Pope Francis has been sick, but he seems to be okay now. And his schedule he just stopped doing a lot of physical things. But he was still giving his talks, still meeting with people. He turns 87 on Sunday. So happy birthday to Pope Francis. I saw a headline, he gave a talk just today. Every Wednesday he has a general audience, and they're like 6 hours ahead of us, so we get the news while it's still early in our day. I love the headline. It was, Christians must be open to listening to God, helping others. And that's one of the things I really like about Pope Francis. He's just kind of simple and says important things. We must be able to listen to God and help others. I just love that, helping others. And I need to just, besides liking the idea of it, I have to do it more, But man, if we're not doing that, we're not living the life. No matter what we believe, I think, if we're not helping others, we're not living the life. So it's not just a head game, life of faith, right? So I read a little bit farther in that article. He wrote, do I take to heart the people I meet, bringing them to Jesus in prayer? I mean, just that line, you could just think about that, pray on that. Do I take to heart people I meet? So God puts people in our path every day, right? Ooh, we got some runners. Looks like the Blue Gold track team. Yeah, remember when you were that young? Maybe you are that young. But it's good. Do I take to heart people that I meet, that God puts in my life on a day, and do I take them to Jesus in prayer? Well, yes and no. But I mean, let's hold that out to you. It's just a one-liner, but it can kind of change your life. If you see your life as something like a spiritual journey, listening to God. God doesn't speak like I'm speaking to you, unless you have an extraordinary gift. And but he speaks to us in all kinds of ways. The people that he brings in our lives, the circumstances of our life that he brings into our days, and he wants us to be part of each other's lives. So probably every day, if we put ourselves out there a little bit, you can have a significant interaction with somebody else and be curious about their lives and find out a little bit and take them to prayer. Take them to Jesus in prayer. This person wasn't necessarily in need. I was at the grocery store yesterday. I loved it. There's just one guy had actually had a box of wine in front of me, and then in front of him was someone didn't have that much, but something got held up. The person was really, I don't know whose fault it was, but and usually I'm kind of impatient, but I didn't have anywhere I had to be, and I actually had compassion for them both. I didn't want the customer to think that we're all glaring at her like, why was she a problem person? And I didn't want the clerk to think we were glaring at her like she was incompetent, So eventually it got to be my turn, and I had all these frozen pizzas, and I had my collar in, and so she knew I was a church guy. I don't know if she knows Catholic priest or not, but so I had all these frozen pizzas. Shared one with the staff today. The coupon's over after Tuesday, so I took advantage. Anyway, so she just I smile, and we're having a pleasant interaction. How's it going? And then she says, "You should give these to people for communion." So I laugh. I said, "Yeah, our church would go pretty fast, don't you think?" She said, "Yeah, I think it would, So anyway, I like kind of just friendly banter, little connection with somebody, goodwill, good stuff. Anyway, I could take her to prayer, hoping that life is a festival. She was not, sometimes it's our high school students that are doing those jobs. She was probably about 40 years old or so, and doing her best. What else did you say? It said, do I take to heart people that I meet during the day, bringing them to Jesus in prayer? Then he says, do I want to do something so that the joy of the gospel, which has transformed my life, might make their lives more beautiful? So maybe that was a success story. Maybe to some extent I did that. But part of that is, as the gospel transformed your life, you have that joy of the gospel in your heart, so that when you meet others, you can help make their lives more beautiful. Yeah, this coming Sunday is Joy Sunday. It's always a challenge, but the second reading is rejoice in the Lord always. Pray constantly, rejoice always. It's beautiful, but it's challenging. And prayed it as staff just a couple hours ago. So anyway, that's what Pope Francis said today. Did I say something else about him? Maybe not. Oh, he wants to be buried in St. Mary Major Basilica. You're like, well, so what? Why is that news? Well, like a lot of things, he wouldn't be following precedent. Like, I think all the popes, I don't know when the last pope who died was not buried in St. Peter's Basilica in the Vatican. So Vatican City is actually its own city-state, and then around it is Rome. And so they're all buried at St. Peter's in Vatican. Not every pope, but way back. And he says, no, I want to be buried at St. Major Mary in Rome. And I remember being there and wanting to go there because I knew the Pope loved that church, and I knew he knelt and prayed something about Mary. Okay, so I go there, and I know, all popes, he loves peace and prays for peace all the time. So there was this votive chapel that had a statue of Mary, Queen of Peace, in marble, and had a kneeler right in front of it. And I remember kneeling there and thinking, hey, this is where the Pope kneels. Whenever he goes to another country, he'll stop there and pray for Mary's protection. When he returns, he stops there and thanks Mary for guiding him and keeping him safe. So I thought, well, it was really a lovely moment, because I thought I was praying where the Pope said. I said, so anyway, as time went on and I learned more about his visits to St. Mary Major Basilica, especially as COVID began, because there's an icon there, and what I found out was that's where I was praying is not where he would go pray. He had prayed in another chapel that was more ornate and had an icon of, what do they call it? Our Lady Salus Populi Romanus, something like that. Our Lady healing the people of Rome. And so when the pandemic came out, he took that icon. There's an icon of Mary holding the child. I ordered a copy. I'll show it to you in a couple of weeks when it comes in. And it's just one of the most heart-wrenching sort of images of the Pope. He's just walking alone. I guess a photographer was with him, with this, holding this icon, walking through the streets of Rome. If you remember the pandemic, Rome had all these deaths. It was just an incredible amount of death in Rome. And so the streets were empty. Everyone else was quarantining, and Pope was carrying this. Because apparently this same image had some healing effect or protective effect during the plague, like in the 1300s, the Black Death. And they think the icon was from around 1100, that old. So anyway, I was not praying in the right spot where I thought he was. But that's why the Pope wants to be buried there, because he loves this image of Mary. And he sees her, as I mentioned, as his protector and guide and friend, and he wants his body to lie near her image that has meant so much to him during his papacy, which I think was really, really cool. So that's him. 87, yeah, he'll be 87 on the 17th. As in terms of, how to listen, he says you got to listen, you got to help. Listening to God, it's always a question. I love to talk about that with the school children at the Mass. Today we had a little different Mass. I got to tell one of my favorite stories, which is a little long to tell now, but how light came into the world. Basically, someone had to be convinced, cajoled, coerced into sharing his light because he wanted to keep it all to himself. And he thought that it was his gift and he didn't have to share it. And he thought he was benefiting somehow, but he couldn't see either because he was, And then in the sharing of the light, finally, everybody was happier. So it's like we're all happier when we overcome our self-centeredness. If we want to gain ourselves, we have to lose ourselves. Listening. Yeah, listening. So just some basic things that occurred to me was to listen, you have to be quiet, right? Even if we're talking to someone, we think we're listening. If our heads are like, what am I going to say next? Or what do I think about that? What do I? We're not going to be a very good listener, right? But to really just kind of put ourselves in the back. I love when kids raise their hand in church, and I call on them, and they say, oh, I forgot. And usually I say, why you forgot? And they probably think I'm going to tell them because they're bad or something. But because you're a good listener, I bet. Sometimes when we really listen to other people, we forget what we're going to say because we're really listening to them. So as much as we can, if we want to listen to God, that's an Advent goal. It's a beautiful Advent goal. It's just you got to find a quiet spot where you can actually hear your own breath. When you hear some squirrels chasing each other over there. When you have a thought go through your head, that's a good image actually. You get distracted by a thought, or I see these squirrels. You just kind of notice that, and then go back and you breathe. Just kind of be quiet, be attentive to God, and kind of maybe remember your day. Maybe remember the checkout person at festival food, or maybe think of something that you did that would be pleasing to God as far as you would know, and God you won't hear like a thank you from the clouds, but maybe a sense of God's delight or happiness or pleasure, and you being good in a moment, and generous and merciful. That's kind of listening to God, And maybe remember other other things in your day. Maybe could use a little corrective voice, like you got to try a little harder there, or do better next time. Maybe you're pondering the news of the day. Maybe you're thinking of the horrors of the war scenes that we see on TV now, and how is God? If you listen for God there, what do you hear? What do you sense? What's God's attitude toward that? You sense the sorrow there, and maybe we can catch that ourselves. It's very subtle stuff, trying to listen to God. It's easy to say we got to listen to God, but then sometimes it's just obvious, and maybe we think, well, I just know what's right and wrong. It's not God, but God gives us that sense, right? It's one of those things you learn by doing, I think, but I think it does begin with making ourselves available to God, because we can't listen if we're not listening. So there's that. What else is going on? I missed the Christmas concert today because we had a staff meeting right at the exact same time. So, but it's going to be streamed. So if you want to go to the Parish YouTube channel, I should try to find the link and put it up on our Facebook page. But the school program is about an hour long. I can't wait to see it. BCCW, okay. Holy Land items, okay. That looks pretty good. Yeah, about 20. I don't know, I just got to mention a little bit about anti-Semitism. Has been in the news a lot, and it's so tragic when any class of people is attacked, or people are hostile toward them because their color of their skin or their religion or their ethnicity, or whatever it is. I mean, I'm just kind of saying the obvious, and yet it seems to happen a lot in our world now. And there's been a lot in the news about that this week. And, as far as I remember, I'm no expert, but I remember Jewish people have been kind of just really probably ever since the rise of Christianity, sadly, have been attacked, and just people being hostile toward them. And I don't know if it's just because they're distinct and different, or they're a minority, and people in the majority are always looking to blame someone in the minority or trying to keep what they have. And then a lot of I hinted at all this stuff in the gospel actually before it got really in the news a lot, but in the gospel, in the bulletin a few weeks ago, that even the gospel stories, they're hard to proclaim sometimes because it's always like the Jews did this, and and it's usually not complimentary, because they're plotting against Jesus, or, to crucify him, and a lot of times it'll say the Pharisees and Sadducees, which is great because that's kind of what it is. But is it John's gospel mostly? It'll just say the Jews, and we know Jesus was Jewish, and his apostles were Jewish, and it's not referring to them when they say the Jews. So it's like even in the Holy Scriptures, there's this labeling of a whole group in kind of a negative light, and I just wish they had written like the Jewish leaders, or those in charge of the temple said, or those, but it's like the Jews. So the stage is kind of set there just for any kind of prejudice to begin with. There's some awful things when things would go wrong, and like the Middle Ages or something, there'd be famine or disease, epidemic. Well, let's blame the Jews, and just totally baseless, but just looking for a scapegoat. Why is this bad stuff happening? It's the Jews because they're different, and look what they did to Jesus. And really tragedy. And of course, it hit the height of the tragedy was during the 1940s, when all 6 million were killed, because they were Jewish. That's the only reason. Nazi camps, So then, I think there's also, I remember, seems like I heard that because there was this kind of anti-Jewishness kind of in the air as Christianity ascended, and they were more of a minority, and that Jewish people weren't allowed to own land, and that was the big deal, to own land. And so then they were forced to do occupations that didn't involve farming or land, you know. So they were sometimes the first ones who got into business and merchant and banking, as all that stuff started, you know. Not even because they wanted to, but it's like their options were very limited because they couldn't own land. So then, then some of them prospered, right? So that was another thing. Now, you know, we can get on them because they're not Christian or they have this, and now people found out, well, this, you know, they're a lot of them are wealthier than we are, you know, and they're different, and so let's criticize them, let's blame them for this. So just like through the centuries, just a lot of scapegoating. And so I understand there's the whole movement of Zionism, you know, starts in the late 1900s, and we need a place where we can just be ourselves. You know, that's why, you know, Israel is a state now, you know. And of course, they had to put Israel somewhere, and then that led to this whole, because then, you know, Arab people who were there resented the fact that they were there, and now we have it's an unending. You'd like to think there could be some compromise, and you know, the U.S. State Department is pushing for a two-state solution. I think that'd be great. Getting there gets harder and harder. The more that these really hardcore the settler movement is just saying this is all our land. They attack the Palestinian people that have been living on the land for years now, and they're olive trees, and they're saying, get out of here, this land belongs to us, God said so. So I mean, that's harsh too and unjust. But where was I? I've heard it many times. I thought most recently, if you talk to like a Jewish person in Israel, very often you just get this sense that, you know, what a relief that there's a place I can just be myself and not worry about a hostile glare, not worry about prejudice. You know, they speak my language here. I can be, you know, they observe the Sabbath here. I can just be who I am and not feel like I'm going to get scapegoated or blamed for stuff, because this is, you know, we have this country. It's our culture, you know. So it's a beautiful thing. So, and then, but, you know, the conflict, living together. So I understand that, and I certainly understand the other side as well in terms of, and then the extremists. I'm going to put my foot in my own, but there's so many people that want to live in peace there. Those are the people that I mostly met when I was on sabbatical, and it's the ones who maybe say no, all or nothing. If you both say all or nothing, it's just, we want it all. I don't know. So anyway, but I will say this too. I don't think. Sometimes, you know, if you're really into the politics and the taking sides and stuff, there can be it seems like in the last week there's almost a suggestion, if you're not if you question Israel's judgment and the decisions they're making about the war, that's somehow anti-Semitic. That doesn't seem true to me. You know, it's like if you question the bishop on a decision or the Pope, does that mean you're being anti-Catholic? I mean, not really. So anyway, want to share some of that. Getting prettier, right? As it got darker, the lights came up on the bridge, so I'll step aside and wish you well. And we have one more chat before Christmas. Huh? All right. Let's sing a song about peace. We're talking about that. Peace is flowing like a river, flowing out of you and me, flowing out into the desert, setting all the captives free. Blessed Advent. Happy listening. Bye-bye.